Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for our Wellness Wednesdays talk. Tonight we have a special guest, Dr. Sheryl Holder. I'm very excited about our guest that we have tonight, and thank you for being with us tonight, Dr. Holder.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So I bring you greetings. Want to share with you that my name is Ruban Roberts. I am the CEO and founder of RER Consulting Enterprise. Our two signature programs are Teen Talk and COVID-19 Mental Health and Wellness Program, also known as CMHWP. You'll see that information in your crawl. You'll see information about our website, mymentalhealthmiami.com, our care coordination team contact number, and I'll explain all of that to you a little bit more detail a little bit later on. Wellness Wednesdays is a product of the COVID-19 Mental Health and Wellness Program. It was developed to assess mental health impact of COVID on Miami-Dade residents by taking a brief survey and receiving for survey participants to receive a scorecard that assesses with an empirically validated instruments where you are in terms of your levels of stress, anxiety, depression, and support. I encourage all of you who are watching to go to our website at mymentalhealthmiami.com, click on the survey button in the upper right corner, take the survey, and most importantly, learn your score. Once you complete the survey, you'll be given your score electronically, and you'll receive contact information regarding our care coordination team, which number is also listed in the crawl. That care coordination team will assist you with linking you to services as far as mental health, and environmental services such as food, shelter, clothing, housing, and so on and so forth. So I encourage you to get your score and then reach out to our care coordination team, which is powered by New Horizons Mental Health and Community Clinic.
Okay,
Good
good.
evening, Dr. Holder. I look forward to the very enriching dialogue that we're going to have tonight. For those of you who are listening, I encourage you to grab a family member, to reach out to a family member or people that may be able to benefit from the information that we're going to share tonight. If you know someone who's struggling with health issues, if you know someone that is struggling with just getting out of bed or seems depressed or anxious, or just stressed out, I strongly advise you to have them watch tonight's episode with Dr. Sheryl Holder. So I want to just start off really, really quickly, Dr. Holder, and just ask the question for you. I noticed that we have a lot of folks who are, traveling, who are in the midst of this COVID situation, but has taken it as this is business as usual and not taking it very seriously. And I want to hear your opinion about that. Where are we with COVID? Is it over? Is it something that we just need to just come to terms with? What's your idea? What's your opinion about this?
Well, thanks for having me. Any kind of chronic problem, thing that goes on, gets this reaction. So it's not a surprise. And COVID is not over, but we're at a stage where, because so many people have been infected and also vaccinated, so when people get the infection, they're not as sick and they're not dying. So it doesn't seem as bad. So for some people, it'll be like a regular cold. For other people, it is still very serious because we're losing in the US almost 300 people a day from COVID. So it
Really?
is not over. Yeah, the data is not out there and people are forgetting. But when you look across the United States, people are still dying. Just that they're not dying at the rates that they were dying before. But they're still dying higher than if you had the flu or if you had another kind of infection. So it is still a serious infection, but because so many of us are either had it several times, or vaccinated, you don't feel the severity. So folks who tend to want to take risk, and there'll always be those kind of people in our communities who will take risk and say, forget it, I can do this, they'll do it. Others who know their health issues and know that they have other people who might be sicker if they get it, they should be more cautious. So we're at the point where you've got to be real with yourself, understand your risk, understand the people around you risk, and decide if you want to go out there and take a chance of getting an infection that you'll probably get. So that's where we are, is real honest assessment of where you are, how strong your body is, and then wear a mask or not wear a mask. Now, we can tell you by doctors where you fit, but
Right.
it's for you to accept that.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. I did not know that the morbidity rate was still as high as what you're suggesting, based on the research that you've done. You come heavily credentialed, and I know that you're speaking based on facts and information that you've obtained. Now, there's something else I wanted to inquire about. Now, I must admit that I'm one of the ones that I travel. I just came from New York this weekend, but I wore my mask on the plane and at the events and that sort of thing. So I try to take those extra precautions. I just don't go out and not, prepare myself, especially if I'm in large crowds. What I've been hearing from friends of mine who are 40 plus, that had fully vaccinated and contracted COVID again. And they're speaking about this thing where the symptoms linger long after they've tested a negative again. So is that something that's common with certain groups of people in terms of age, ethnicity? Please fill us in on that information, because I
Well,
would love to
ethnicity,
help with that.
ethnicity doesn't, there's no race. We're all the same race. So when
Right.
you see the variations in people, it tells you how their immune system was before they got sick.
Ah,
Now, people who are older, the immune system is not as good. People who are diabetic, the immune system's not as good. People who have other chronic diseases, people who are overweight tend to have a different immune response. Just respond differently to the infection. Vaccines do not prevent infection. And we tell folks that, oh, I'm vaccinated and I got it. Yes, vaccines don't prevent infections. What vaccines do is when you get infected, you're not as sick as if you would have been if you weren't infected. So I tell folks who still got sick when they're vaccinated, give God thanks that you had a little extra protection, because you'd have been really sick if you weren't. You learn more about your immune system with every infection. Until you're infected, you don't realize how you're going to fight. And that's why we tell folks, diabetics, problems with blood pressure, people who are overweight, people with cancers, people with lung problems, people with any kind of disease, you already have a warning sign that you may not respond as well. So it's no surprise. The virus, this new strain, there are always different strains. Every time I tell folks, when you have kids, all four of your children will look a little different. What the virus does, all million of their viral children are going to be a little different. And they produce millions every time they get in your body and replicate. The new variant seems to be latching into the throat more. And folks seem to have a lot more throat pain and coughing than the first, what we call the wild type, the very first one. The very first one that came out locked into your lower respiratory system. That's why you saw all those pneumonias. All of them start in the nostril and then they spread. So, because our vaccines don't get the level of antibody and fighting cells high enough where it latches on, that's why we're still getting infected. But it's enough to fight it when it comes into the rest of the body. So, everybody's going to linger a little bit. I agree. The people who are getting it now tend to seem to get more throat problems, and then they have a cough for weeks later. That happens with a lot of other viral infections, flus, colds, because you cause an irritation and the cough mechanism gets irritated. Cold air irritated, different exposure, smoke, and so you'll constantly have a cough for weeks later. Some people are getting the brain fog still with this
Hmm.
last infection, and they tend to also tell their brain is a little slower. You don't feel it that it's foggy as much, but what they find is word finding problems. Like they want to get the word out, and the word kind of gets a little bit slow in coming out. And they just don't seem to be processing it as quickly as they used to. So we really, that's why we tell folks, try not to get infected as much as you can, because who knows what's going on with your body when it happens. For most part, hundreds of people get it. 90% of the people feel okay. But how do you know where you're going to fit, in the 90
Right.
or in the 10, until you get it? So you're going to hear everybody who, some people get it more than once. I tell folks, if you're more than once, your immune system's already telling you you are going to have to protect yourself some more.
Thank you, Dr. Holder, for sharing that very important information. I think that we're not getting these updates as frequently as we were in the beginning of COVID. So it's very good to know that you have this information that you can share with us, especially about folks with pre-existing conditions, with chronic illnesses, folks who are older, that they really need to protect themselves, to mask up, to make sure that they can prevent them from catching COVID. And to me, I think that this information is essential. So I know that you've done a lot of work with the social determinants of health, and I want to just can you give us a brief description of uh, social determinants of health and talk about the correlation between actual physical health and mental health, if you can.
Okay. The term social determinants of health, it started way back in the 60s. And it's when people started looking and saying, why are so many people getting sick? And why is it that some people you can prevent them from getting sick and other people you can't? What's going on? And this study is started all over the world, much of it in England, and where they had a national health service and everybody was getting health care, yet some people didn't do as well. So when they looked at it, and we look at it around the world, we find out that just your genetics, because there is no race, so we know race is just a social construct. That means
Construct, that's right.
it's what people decide to call people who look a certain way, who come from a certain geographic region. Humans that come from one geography, from another geography, they decided to call it race. So if our genetics are all the same, what's really playing? Why are some people getting sicker than others? Why aren't we all living till 100 if all our genetics are pretty close enough? So when we look at it, there are some differences in genetics that comes from where you've lived. So that's why we see some people with sickle cell who came out of Africa because of an infection that made you more susceptible to certain things. There are people who have genetic changes who end up with Down syndrome and all those, and they may not live as long. But the vast majority of us, it's where we live, where we work, all the stress that we undergo, all the pollution that we're exposed to, all the conditions under which we're forced to live. And when you don't have any money and you can't buy good food and you can't put yourself in a safe area and you can't put yourself in good housing, you are more likely to pass early. So those are the factors that we look at and saying, now why are black and brown people, especially black people, why are black men dying so early? Why black women getting certain diseases? Why are we having so much mortality during pregnancy? And it comes down to what conditions we're living under and our access to money and power. Because when you vote and the people in power force you to live in certain areas where you're right next to the dump that has a lot of pollution, or they decide to build a highway right through your neighborhood, and all the highway comes with all the pollution, and your kids get asthma, and your pregnancy don't do as well, and in Florida you overheat because you're so dehydrated, which then sends you into preterm labor, then you don't do as well because your blood pressure is too high. Or you live in areas where you don't even get physical education in school, so you don't grow up with a habit of exercising. Or if you do want to exercise, you can't even go outside and walk around because it's too hot or it's too unsafe. And you can't find a way to pay your way out of it by going to UFit or LA Fitness and pay all of that every month. So it compounds itself. So it's really the where you live, where you work, where you play, the systems that you live under. So the racism, the sexism, the homophobia that stresses people. And then when you have no access to power and money, so you can't even find a way out, you tend to die earlier. And across the world, the wealthier you are, the healthier you are. Because wealthy people can find a way to get themselves in safer environments, get better food, can change the policies, and get people to support the way they live, the way they work, and so they can live longer. So the more we understand how that impacts your life, we can stop telling people just say no, stop telling people eat less, stop telling people you're doing this that's making you sick, when it is really our community, our society, and all the power that we don't have that's pushing people to do worse. And until we change that, we're not going to see the improvements in our health as a community. So
Very,
that's people
very
to
powerful.
understand fully.
It's very powerful. So now talk about how a little bit more about how those things, those physical ailments and the lack of access, how that plays on you from a mental health perspective.
Yeah. Well, coronavirus was probably one of the biggest things that showed everybody in the world that you thought you were all doing great and happy and doing well. And
Right.
then all of a sudden you get put in a situation like a lot of other poor people live every day. You get in a situation where you can't even control where you go. You don't have access to the right foods. You couldn't even run around and exercise. Everybody in this world who is in Western world, not in the poor world, but in the Western world, gained weight during coronavirus. I'm like PhDs, MDs, RNs, masters, everybody who thought that why are those poor people so fat? They all gained 10, 20 pounds. What was different? They were just as smart as they were before, right? They were just as supposedly wealthy, but it still happened. So, and people's mood changed.
Mm,
The same people who thought everything was perfect, they had this wonderful world, their living conditions change. Their access, even if they had money, they really couldn't spend it the way they wanted to. And they didn't have the power many times to change it. So you see how where you live, where you work, all of that can wear on you and change your mental ability to stay well. Now, mental illness is only everybody can be stressed, and it doesn't mean you're mentally ill. When we
mm,
talk about mental illness in a sense, it's that what used to be the way of coping, you're no longer able to, it affects your day-to-day life of functioning. It affects your ability to survive well. So you are doing fine, but you somehow slowly started not wanting to get up, not wanting to eat right, losing interest. That's when we turn it over from just your day-to-day stress to saying that there may be some mental health issues that we need to address. So it's a fine line from when you could function, even though all that stress is there, to when you can't function as well. And when you can't function as well, that's when we say there's mental health issues and the brain has changed a bit. And we see there's some chemical imbalance many times. There are different parts of the brain that processes things a little differently. And so that's when we know the brain has reacted to what's happening in the world and it's changed and creating ability for you not to function as well. And with treatment, we can get that back. So that's why we want folks to not say stigma is something that I
yes.
should be able to do. But you don't tell your heart when your heart gets clogged up with arteries and cholesterol. You don't tell your heart, okay, clean out those blood vessels myself. We're going to dominate. No, you go get help. And you go
Right.
get some medicines to clean out the heart, or some people get stents that open up those arteries. So the brain has the same issue that at times it will change. And when it does change, we have to be on point and go get some help so we can bring it back to function the way it used to function.
Excellent, excellent advice. And I like how you brought it all together. I agree with you wholeheartedly. As a therapist myself, I share with folks all of the time. Once I went through learning how to use the DSM, it was the 4 at the time, but now
Yeah.
DSM-5. That every
Yeah.
one of us have something in there that's diagnosable. We can find ourselves in that DSM, that diagnostic tool that therapists use for diagnosis. Some of them are situational, like you say, day-to-day stressors. There's no one that's going to ever go through life without stressors. There's no one that's going to ever go throughout life without anxiety. We all
Right.
deal with those things or some sort of depression. But when it becomes debilitating, when it becomes problematic to where you can't move, it becomes stifling. And that's where the issue lies. And so that's one
Right.
of the reasons why we've created this program, because we knew with COVID, with being isolated, and then with a constant barrage of news about all of the negativity that's going on, which also compounds all of the feelings and emotions that you have inside, like you said, that you have zero control over. So it
Yep.
doesn't matter your demographics. It doesn't matter whether you're in the 1 percentile or the 100 percentile or whatever in terms of your income or what have you. We're all impacted by that. And one of the things that we encourage you to do, just to learn your score, is to take the survey. And as I mentioned to you before, you can go to the website, mymentalhealthmiami.com. It's on the crawl. Go up to the, click on that and go to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see the survey. Take the survey, get your score. You'll see what your score is as it relates to stress, anxiety, depression, and levels of support. And then once you get your score, you'll also receive some information with connecting with our care coordination team, which the number is below. Even if you don't want to take the survey right off the bat, you can always contact our care coordination team. They'll do a brief assessment and refer you to the appropriate services. So we encourage you to do those things. This is a very serious time. There's also this issue with a lot of violence right now, Dr. Holden. And
Yep.
how does that all fit into everything that we were talking about tonight? I mean, where there's this uptick where people just seem to, they're pushed over the edge real easily. Is there a connection to what we've been dealing with for the past 2.5, 3 years?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. When your brain gets a little bit tired and you're feeling down, everybody reacts differently. Some people get angry because anger, they feel everything is unfair. They think they have to do something and they're going to find a way to retaliate. There's that percentage. There are other folks who get down, very down, and they hurt themselves. And then there are other folks who just kind of mope around for a long time and are kind of miserable to be around. So there are different groups. And when you have over 300 million people in the world, in the US, some of those ones who want to retaliate and get angry will come after you. So again, that's why when you talk about the scores, it's good because when you get the treatment, you start seeing those numbers change. And then you realize what works and what doesn't work. So we do like folks to find out their scores so they can track it and have a better understanding. But when the entire society is going through a lot of stress, and especially people who are on the fringes and don't have a support system. Because if there's one thing that's consistent with all those shooters that we've seen and all the folks who've been killing, their support system has been pretty frayed. They had problems with family members, they didn't have a lot of friends, they were more isolated than just all of us who were isolated during COVID. At least we would connect through phone calls and Zoom, and we had somebody. Many of the folks who have no one, they really will break a lot earlier. And that's what we're seeing. We're just seeing the same population that was at risk reacting in a way that's dangerous to all of us. So, not a surprise, and no one's surprised. And this is what happens when people are angry and down and nobody to sort of reason with. To tell them that, let's see things a little differently. It's not as bad as you're thinking. So that's one of the things that we just don't have. Our society has changed. I think when we go back to when you see the old world, when people were living in small groups and they had a group leader and the wise people, and they had people to sit and talk to. the structure of our society encouraged us to sit around and talk. When we used to sit around and do storytelling, that was an opportunity to share your experiences. The the society has changed so much that people are not as connected in that way, so it's a lot easier for them to break. And so we have to find ways to rebuild that connection. So if you're breaking a little bit, there's somebody there to reach out to you pretty quickly.
Yes, and what I find is that with these groups, these different groups that promote and propagate hate, uh, folks who feel isolated are drawn to them because they're
Yeah.
espousing the same things that they're feeling. And we are very social people. What you just described, the
Mhm.
nature of human beings, we are very social. We interact, we couple off, we have families,
Mhm.
we have strong relationships, families, whether it be up, topsy turvy, we still have those relationships. It's
Right.
about how we navigate those relationships in terms of our well-being, and really to, and like you said, to find the strength to do it. And I like what you said earlier too about dispelling the myths, the stigma around mental health. I think that one of the things that one of our functions too is to really,
Mhm.
really, just wipe away those the stigma of mental health and let folks know that everyone deals with issues, but when those issues are unattended, they become more severe, and
Exactly.
that's where we are concerned. So that's why we have the scorecard. That's why we have the program. I want you to go and do the scorecard because we don't want something that's manageable now to turn into something that's more severe. When you see these youth or you see these young folks, at some point they went from a place that was manageable to a place that was unrealistic, and they found their tribe because again we're social.
Yeah.
So they found that antisocial tribe to connect with that continues to share with them these negative things that they need to do and so on and so forth. So you're hitting all of the buttons here. I'm
Yeah.
hopeful.
You know what they find when you do studies, they do a lot of studies on, especially with vaccines, which is one of the areas I studied, is what makes people anti vax. Before
Right,
they get to anti vax, they're on the fence. And what they
right.
find is that the people who are anti vax are very, very aggressive in recruiting people to their side. So
Mm,
it is that they find people who are thinking like they do. But
right,
generally, those people who think like they do are more aggressive at converting people than the folks like us who might, or you who might be like, let's do it this way, another way. We may not be as aggressive. This is what the studies are showing. So now the studies, this is why you're seeing funding for more programs like this. So the opposite message is going to be out there to say mental health is not stigmatized. It's okay to come on in, because the other side is very aggressive of getting their negative message over. So we have to be as aggressive with our positive message, or else they will win. And that's what we found in the anti-vax camp, that if somebody's on the fence, those anti-vaxxers will know they're on the fence. They'll flood them with material. They'll constantly contact them. They'll give them the attention that they want, which is really what's at the root of many of these people. They just want some attention, somebody who loves them, somebody who listens to them. And the folks who want to recruit, that mindset will be much more aggressive than the opposite side. So we're learning more that we have to be as aggressive to say, it's okay if you're feeling a little down. Come on over. We're here to help you. We
right,
don't think it's a big deal. Come on in. Take that
right,
test. You're doing the right thing, and we have to do more of it in the churches, in the schools, everywhere. You're talking to your friend. It's okay that you're a little down. Come get some help. I did it. It works.
right. So I appreciate everything that you just said, but you just touched on something that made me, and I think this is a very important topic, and has huge implications. So historically, uh, uh, um, minorities, Black people in general, because of the history, different experimentations, with women with hysterectomies, not
Mhm.
being, with the Tuskegee experience, the experiment. I'm sorry. And what do you have to say? I know that you were You worked in the area of vaccines. And what do you have to say to folks who historically been mistreated in institutions that they should trust, medical institutions or facilities, or from government entities? What do you have to say to them about really giving them a different perspective about vaccines and just seeking certain medical help and attention?
Well, I tell folks it's real. I respect your ideas and the ability to see danger because no one should go through that experience and come out and say, oh, yeah, I trust you. Absolutely not. That tells me your brain isn't working. Yes, you should definitely come out of the experiences that Black folks have come out and say, let me sit back a little bit and let me learn some more. And let me be a little bit, not skeptical, but let me hold back a little bit on judgment till I get all the information from trusted sources, from good sources. So
Yes,
there's nothing wrong in saying no because you have really screwed me over for a whole bunch of centuries and I am no dummy. So I said, yes, definitely do that. So, but there is enough information, there are enough people out there that you can start even reading it and learning more about your body, learning more about the science, so you can make an informed decision. So I support all of that saying hold back. But then how do you go forward? Because you cannot just go and make up a decision if you don't understand how the body works. So then go learn how the body works. Vaccines make total sense, especially when you look at the history of vaccines, where it comes from. We're taking back to the slave days, back in Africa, when the slave came over and told the master that that cowpox, when we were in our villages, we would take a little bit of the infection, rub it on our skin, and we would see that our people will live longer. That information makes total sense because that's how your body builds immunity. It
right.
has to see the infection and then builds up the cells to fight it so when it sees it again. So vaccines historically make sense. Now, you cannot deny that we've had a technological revolution. And what used to take us 100 years can now take us minutes.
Mm.
So the taking something fast is not a bad thing. I don't know anybody who would complain that they got their money in a million, they became a millionaire in a year as a problem. So, what's the difference of getting a vaccine that was developed on old ideas because we have the computer technology and we put money at it that we're able to come up with a solution rapidly? That is not a problem. Now, the testing, millions of people were tested. The testing was sufficient. There were enough folks in there. Again, there's no real race. So what we're looking at in the differences are people's who've lived certain ways, who have different body masses, who have different changes because they've been stressed. So Black folks have a little bit of stress differences. So yes, vaccines may work differently in people we say are Black. But for the basic mechanism of action, humans all respond. So when you do the research and you do the science, you can see some that it makes sense. And then this is a brand new disease. This is where I say you're going to have to trust some of the messengers and step out on faith.
Is it really brand new? It's COVID-19.
Disease.
It's the
Yes, it's a brand
coronavirus.
new coronavirus. 2019 was the first time in the world anyone has seen that infection. There's 7 billion people. Until that infection goes through 7 billion people, we will not be able to say we're safe. And after it goes through 7 billion people, will we be able to have a variant that our bodies can control? So that's the issue when it's a totally brand new virus that our humans have never seen. And that's the fact. And the
So,
good
so,
thing is we know it because we can do the genetic analysis.
so let me ask you, because I'm reading and I'm understanding that these are variants, right? So coronavirus existed before the
Right.
COVID-19,
Mm-hmm.
But this variant is a brand new one, is what you're saying.
Brand new one.
Right.
Exactly.
And then it has different strands that are associated
Exactly.
with
With
this
it,
variant. And so
again,
it's not
because it
like
makes children, and every
right,
child that it makes is a little different.
right. And as these strands grow, then they become more resilient. So the things that you
Um,
use to
Not
is
that
that
they're
the thing?
more, they may not be more resilient. Some become able to infect you faster,
Okay.
but sometimes they may not make you as sick.
Right.
Now, your body becomes better able to fight it because you've developed antibodies with every time you've seen it. Now, we did the vaccines, so your body thought you saw the infection, but you just got the information about what that virus looks like. So you develop the fighting power. So
Got
that's
it.
where technology has come. We don't have to give you the infection anymore. We used to in the old time vaccines, kill it and then give you a little bit of it, and then your body says, okay, that's what it looks like. We don't have to do that anymore. We can get the genetic
Polio is an
information.
example.
Right, polio. And then some people got polio because it wasn't killed, and sometimes it was killed. We don't do that anymore. But the virus will change each mutation, and this is not different. HIV virus does the same. And when
Okay.
we see HIV virus that replicates and mutates, that's why we have to keep getting the medicines, the antivirals have to change. And they have
Right.
to always take the medicine because you got to keep the viral load small. Because if you keep the virus building up in an HIV person, it continues to change where none of the drugs work.
Right. So I think this is something else that our audience really needs to hear, and some of our audience members
Mhm.
may know. But there's a difference between bacterial infection and a viral infection. That, from what I'm hearing you say, you can expound on it. That viral infections never leave your body; it's always in your system. Is that correct?
Not all of them. No, we clear them. We can clear some, but there are lots of viruses that are always in our bodies. We have
Right.
millions of viruses in the world, and your
Right.
body is constantly battling and keeping a level amount. But there's some viruses that go in parts of your cell that you don't clear, like the chickenpox virus. That virus
Right.
stays in. HIV virus will stay in you, but the regular cold virus doesn't stay in you forever. You get rid of it and you're gone. You just get a new virus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now,
So,
coronavirus, we don't think stay in you forever. We don't
but the
know. It's
research is still pending, right?
yeah, still pending. That's the problem.
But bacteria infections are easily they're wiped out. You can
You
just
can kill those, yeah.
right.
And our antibiotics work. Viruses are really tricky. I say if the end of the world comes, viruses will live. If there's it's just if you talk about a chosen species, viruses are amazing. They won't because viruses need your DNA and your R because they don't have their own information. So they won't survive unless they find something else to live on
Something that's living that they can breed on.
that
Yeah,
they can breed on, right?
yeah.
So that's a little tricky thing with viruses. But they are incredible in their desire to survive. They'll change, they'll mutate, they make millions of themselves, they can live anywhere possible. That's why you can't dominate viruses. You can protect yourself from them. You can build your antibody to fight them until they change to a way where they don't hurt you.
Hmm.
And there's some that will do that. I hope coronavirus goes to that level.
So do I. So
Yeah.
do I. So do I. I'm sure we all do. Listen,
Yeah.
we're on with Dr. Sheryl Holder, Associate Dean of FIU Herbert Weatherman College of Medicine. This highly acclaimed internist doctor she gave us a lot of gems today and really gave us an education on uh, just dealing with the coronavirus, dealing with mental health issues, and dealing with healthcare issues and the correlation between the two. If you didn't catch it from the beginning, hopefully you'll see it on our rebroadcast where you can get a lot of this information. I'd like for you to like to end with a couple of things. One, for you to talk about our path to wellness. So we talked about the different diseases, the different viruses, and that sort of thing. But as a physician, what do you recommend for us to be on the path of wellness from a mental and physical place. What are your recommendations?
What I recommend, I've been doing this medicine doctoring thing for 30 plus years. And again, most of my thing were poor people who don't have all the resources, but there's so much strength. And when you look at your strengths and do the learning and be honest with yourself, you can find the ways to get the solutions that you need that will make your life better. And then you've got to go out there and start fighting for others. Because when you start valuing other people and you start saying that my life and their life is as important, I then start pushing those policy changes. I'm not going to forget about not voting. And when I go out to vote, I'm going to make sure I vote for somebody who's going to clean up the air and do stuff for us, for our community, and not this pretend stuff that you see. You got to look at their policies. They can't tell me they're trying to fight the climate and then vote to pollute us some more. You can't tell me you love my community, but then you can't find a way to get us jobs. Because the wealthier you are, the healthier you are. And if you can't find a way to get us more doctors in medical schools, and you've been doing this for years and you come up with the talk, don't vote for those people. But then also work with building that relationship with each other. Because when you reach out to your friend and reach out to your cousin and your auntie and you start talking to them, you start hearing some different ways to think about life. And then you want to keep living, so then you will exercise. There's no way your auntie should bring you fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and not put some greens on the side and tell you to eat those greens. Because they got to love you and they want you to stay alive. So this is what it takes, is finding the strength and finding the love for each other and valuing each other and knowing that you have to advocate for everybody's life. It's not enough to make your money and go on vacation. You got to come out here and vote to support people who want to support you. And that's very clear based on our current voting rights and what we're seeing, and being very firm that I have to change the policies or else I will not survive. Because they will more than likely put a nuclear plant right in the middle of Liberty City, in that they're trying to save the climate. They're not putting it in Coral Gables, but they'll find some poor black community and drop that facility in there. So that's how we stay well, loving each other and fighting for each other.
Excellent, excellent. So, Dr. Holder, can you also share with us about some of the programs or events or activities that you have coming up? I'd like folks to
Yeah,
know. Yes,
I'm going to share. I do something called Man to Man, and it's a monthly Zoom talk. We just finished the first one because Black men are the least likely to come see the doctor for mental
yes,
health, for their blood pressure, for their prostate. And we had a Dr. Goose who came on and talked about prostate cancer and testosterone and menopause, uh, all the andropause, which is the male version. And we need more of that because we talk about knowing, learning your bodies, valuing your health, and then fighting for it. So we're starting that series. We'll have another. I'll send you information so you can share it.
sure.
We, with the churches, through Keeping the Faith to Fight Coronavirus, where we bring information. We're doing talks on nutrition. Because again, it's knowing how your body works and being honest with yourself and getting the help early, because that little mental health down can turn into major depression, suicide, and homicidal ideas if we don't stop it early. Just like you said, just like our blood pressure can lead to end stage renal disease, but if I can treat it early, I can prevent it. So that's what we're trying. And the Miami-Dade.gov website has a ton of information on heat. I didn't even get into heat, where we're falling down out here on these streets. Our blood pressures are going up. Our diabetes are under control because it's so hot and we're not well hydrated. And poor folks are sitting in these bus shelters, walking around, working in these hard jobs, and their bodies are wilting in this heat. So we have to be prepared. So I'll be coming out. Hopefully, I'll be on Hot 105 soon talking about heat, because Rolling Loud is coming to Miami. And Rolling Loud is one of the biggest outdoor festivals. Kanye is going to be there. Kendrick Lamar is going to be there. Think of all those people in that heat. So we have to protect ourselves. So these are some of the things we're coming: climate change, just all the health factors. But we got to go to foundation. Know how your body works. Be honest with yourself. Know where to get help, and it'll happen. More programs like these. We're going to be out here doing more programs like these and encouraging people to watch and learn, because that's the only way we're going to get there.
So if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
I Instagram, Keeping the Faith to Fight COVID-19. That's our page, our Instagram, that we post a lot of information. On Facebook, James Wilson Bridges Medical Society has a Facebook page. I have a Instagram account, Dr. Sheryl Holder. I talk about climate and I post all the information that I do. And Florida Clinicians for Climate Action. You send an email to them, to Florida Clinicians for Climate Action, you will be able to, they pass all the messages to me. And send it to your show, they can pass the messages on to us so we
We
can get
will.
information. But
We will.
we are pushing our community to start educating each other, reach out to each other, especially with this heat. When it gets 90 degrees, everybody should be calling some elderly person in your family, just checking in on them, making sure they got some water, making sure their AC is working. So these are things that we have to start doing and developing those connections again, because we don't have a little fire to sit around and share our stories like we used to. But we got phones, we have internet, and we can come as close. We just now have reasons to reach out. And heat season is a reason to check in on your old people every week. 90 degrees, check in on them, please, because they will die very quickly. Check in on your pets. Did you take up Waldo, whatever your pet's name? Don't leave them outside, they will die. So lots of reason to call the family and check in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holder. For
Thank
those of you who are watching our Wellness Wednesdays, we are on today with a highly acclaimed, sought after Dr. Sheryl Holder. She just shared a lot of information with us, dealing with healthcare
you.
issues, mental health, the correlation between the two. We talked about just interpersonal types of things, about how we are a social being and that we need to interact and make sure that we're doing pro-social types of activities and to advocate. And the path to wellness, what she's mentioned, is to be active, to be involved, get involved, do some things that will help someone, not only helping yourself, but help someone else who may need some assistance. Be mindful, for those of us who are in South Florida, of being hydrated, and be mindful of how much we're out in the hot and inclement weather, so that those things are having an effect on us all. I really appreciate all that you shared. I hope that this is not the last time that we are interacting together on this program or other activities. We have community events that we'd love for you to participate in as well. And whatever I can do to help promote whatever programs you have, please you reach out to me. I would love to share that information. I want to say to you guys that, you know, you don't find many physicians who, you know, obtain their license and they can go for the big bucks. Uh, but Dr. Holden's been
I
committed,
didn't.
been committed to the community, all the entire community, not just one demographic, but the entire community, and really trying to work to make sure that people are informed, they're enlightened, and that they can take care of themselves, you know, and have access to resources. And that's another thing that I know that Dr. Holder did a great job, has been doing a great job with. Again, my name is Ruben Roberts. I'm the CEO of RER Consulting. RER Consulting, two signature programs are the COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program and Team Talk. This COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program, the essential part of it is for you to take your survey so that you can, it's a mental health assessment survey. And the importance of it is that you get your scorecard once you complete the survey. That scorecard will tell you where you fall in the areas of depression, stress, anxiety, and levels of support. And then you can reach out to our care coordination team, which number is listed below in the crawl. call them, share with them what your concerns are, and they will link you to the appropriate services. I want you to utilize these resources that we have. They're available to you. Dr. Holder shared with you several programs that she's spearheading. We want to make sure that you have access to services in terms of health and mental health. This is one of the reasons why we're doing this Wednesday talk. So make sure that you reach out, make sure that you follow up. If you did not capture this session in its entirety, please wait for the rebroadcast. We will be rebroadcasting this again, and so that you can capture it and get the information that was shared today. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you so much, Dr. Holder.
Thank you.
Hat goes off to you for all that you do. I know you can't get that enough, because I know you've been doing it, like you said, for 30 plus years, and we really appreciate the work that you've done in our community. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right, much.